Hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast. As always, I always say it, but every time I always mean it. I'm so glad you're here. And welcome to part 2 of this series where we are talking about, I'm unpacking in each of these episodes, the 8 self-care practices for times of injustice and rising fascism. Now, if you haven't listened to part 1 of this series, I highly, highly recommend it. Because in part 1, I gave all of the context, what the series is about, what it's for, why I decided to put it together and record these episodes for you, what you can expect, and how I hope that it will be helpful. And so if you haven't checked out part 1, I highly recommend it because all of those details are really important and they really set the stage for everything else that I will be sharing in each episode of this series. And also this way, when you do listen to all of the other episodes, I'm just going to dive right in. And today we're going to be talking about emotional self-care. And so this is so important. Our emotional self-care as we navigate challenging things, as we navigate things, situations, circumstances, whether it is that you are seeing a headline in the news or you are actually witnessing or experiencing something in your community or are being directly affected, we as humans will have emotions as it relates to what we experience. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through a simple 3-step process for when you are noticing an emotion coming up for you because you've either seen something or you're being directly affected by something or you are processing an emotion such as sadness, disappointment, frustration, overwhelm, stress. What do we do with all of these feelings? Because the truth is, as humans, these emotions and any of the emotions on the entire spectrum of human emotions are part of our experience. And this is true always, right? This is true on any given day. As humans, we experience emotions. Even if it's a day of like unicorns and rainbows, everything is amazing. Everything just literally is going as planned. I mean, we have experienced days like that as well. Even on a day like that, there are emotions there as well. There are emotions, joy, peace, satisfaction, calm. And so when I say emotions, we're not always talking about quote unquote negative emotions. But in this series, I am dedicating this episode to support you in the aspect of emotional self-care. And often we are talking about emotions such as sadness, disappointment, fear, worry. And so let's do precisely that and let's dive in. And let me just make one quick note. In the first episode of this series, I talked about being kind to yourself. And one thing that I didn't mention that I want to make sure to mention now is I know that can feel really challenging. And what I didn't do is invite you and let you know, hey, if this feels like something where you really find it so challenging to do any of the things that I unpack in this series, whether that is being kind to yourself, the emotional self-care, the nervous system self-care, there's a couple different places where I can support you at next levels. Here in the podcast, I'm going to share with you what I can share on the podcast, but there are a couple different places where I can support you at next levels. One of those places is my coaching community, The Last 10. So you can go to brendalomelli.com and check out all the details there. And I also have my 30-day course, She Creates Freedom. And you can also find the details for that on my website. So I wanted to just mention at the very top of this episode, if you're listening and you are feeling you would love a next level of support and you feel like I would be such a great match for you during this time to be a support, I absolutely would be honored. Absolutely. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to walk you through some quick foundations for emotional self-care. Literally, I'm going to make it as simple as possible. So this is not going to be an in-depth, here's how. It's going to be as simple as possible, 1, 2, 3 steps, so that you can start to feel more supported in this process. The emotional self-care piece. And then what I'm going to do is literally share with you real life examples. because that is one of my goals with this series, is to share in real time with you how my self-care is taking deeper and deeper root, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. And to share with you just some real examples of what that has been looking like for me. And remember, I said this about 100 times in the first part of the series, but I'm going to say it again. I'm going to be sharing some of my own examples and what this has looked like for me to deepen my self-care as needed. But please, please always center your experience. Okay, so let's get started. Let's really ground this episode with some quick foundations. Remember, I'm giving you the version of this right now that is as simple as possible. This is not in depth, the most comprehensive. It's as simple as possible. So let's say you're feeling a deep sadness. Okay, we're just going to use that as an example, but insert literally any emotion. Let's say you're feeling a deep sadness. Could be fear, could be worry, could be stress. Literally insert any emotion. I'm going to use the example of sadness. Let's say you're feeling sadness. Here's the 1, 2, 3. Step 1, name the emotion. You could do this, literally say it out loud, or maybe you just take note. You mentally are naming, I am feeling sadness. And what I love to do, I'm just going to give you a little bonus here. You may have heard of me talking about this before, especially if you're one of my clients. I almost automatically now bring one of my hands to my heart center, or maybe even both hands. I am feeling sadness. I am feeling so sad. I am feeling afraid. I feel worried. Whatever it is, name the emotion. That's number 1. Number 2, allow whatever it is that you are feeling without judgment. That's number 2. And then number 3, check in. What do I need? What am I needing right now? Okay, so that's going to be our simple as possible 1, 2, 3 for emotional self-care. You're going to name the feeling, allow for whatever it is that you are feeling without judgment, and then check in with yourself. What are you needing? What do you need right now? Even though me describing that process can sound almost too simple, it really, really makes all the difference. And you will feel the difference. You will feel supported in what it is you are experiencing. You will feel supported by you, by yourself. It's like you become your own companion for what it is you are experiencing, for the emotional experience, for the emotional response that you are having. And so what I'm going to do next is actually share my examples with you. I have 3 examples. I could share so many more, but I'm going to share 3 examples with you. And with each of these examples, I'm going to be giving you a little bit of context, like sharing a little bit of context for each of these examples. I'll also be naming the sensations, like what that emotion felt like for me. What was I feeling? What was I experiencing? And what I'm going to do is share what helped. And this is the emotional self-care part. We can also call it the emotional processing part. And remember, of course, center your own experience, because we are all unique individuals. So what will feel helpful for me, for example, let's say when I am feeling and processing anger, may not be the thing that feels supportive or helpful for you. We are each completely unique individuals. Okay, the first example that I wanted to share with you is not too long ago. I think this was actually last month, if I'm not mistaken, but the date doesn't really matter that much. But very recently, there was a Supreme Court ruling that basically made legal racial profiling, allowing immigration customs enforcement to essentially racially profile based on race, ethnicity, if someone's speaking Spanish or has an accent with their English when they're speaking English, also based on where they are, so based on the location, and based on the type of work. In other words, this ruling literally allows agents to profile, detain individuals who look like immigrants. And so when I first heard this news, and so I'm hearing, if I remember correctly, let me tell you some more details. I first heard this, like I wasn't watching a video, I was just hearing the news. And so when I first heard this, I was listening to news updates while doing some other chores. I felt a few things. I felt fear. I also felt I felt sick to my stomach. And I think the other emotion is the disbelief. There's really the initial sensations and emotions was sadness, fear, disbelief, and also anger. I think anger came a little bit after, but first the initial emotions, fear, sadness, disbelief, and this like a sensation that really stands out to me is like I felt sick to my stomach. And so one thing I'll add here is we don't always have the exact names for our emotions, and honestly that part is, it doesn't matter. It's fine. We don't always need to name the exact feeling. It's more so that naming the feeling allows us really like this pause, like, ooh, I'm feeling something. So even if you can't name the feeling in the moment, that's actually really, really common if there's more than one thing you're feeling. It might be a few different emotions that you're experiencing that maybe even feel overwhelming. It's not required that you like have to name one feeling. It's really what this piece is doing. It's just allowing pause to name that you're experiencing something. So you can even literally say, or give yourself a moment. It's about giving yourself this moment to feel like, ooh, I'm feeling something right now. I'm feeling something, or I'm feeling a lot of different things. It gives you that moment. It's allowing yourself that moment is really what the important job that part is doing. And so for myself, I was experiencing these different emotions as a response to receiving this information, and I'm processing this information, and I'm processing the feelings that I'm also having as a response to this information, which initially was sadness, fear and worry, kind of hand in hand, some disbelief, felt sick to my stomach. And so let me share with you a little bit of what helped, or what I did in that moment that helped. First of all, giving myself the opportunity to validate what I was feeling, validate my emotional response. And so in this particular example, here's a couple of things that I did that day. I most certainly cried. And actually, because I felt like I needed to even get some fresh air and like move my body, because there was this like fear and worry energy, I actually grabbed my dog. So what I actually decided to do was go outside. It was like the middle of the day. I grabbed Waffle's leash. Waffle is my super snuggly 7-year-old puppy, because he's always going to be a puppy to me. Waffle, we love our little puppy. But yeah, I grabbed my leash. I grabbed his leash, went outside, and I was walking, crying, kind of processing the news, the information. And even throughout that day, kind of bringing my hand to my heart as needed, kind of taking some deep breaths as needed. I won't get too much into that. I'll talk more about that next week when we talk about nervous system self-care. But for the emotional processing in this example, it was most certainly crying and even getting outside, getting some fresh air, going on a gentle walk while allowing myself to cry as needed. And of course, this doesn't quote unquote fix anything. It doesn't delete what happened. It doesn't erase the situation. But that's not the purpose of emotional self-care. The purpose of emotional self-care is to support ourselves in our emotional experience. And so I can think back to a time in my life when, as soon as there was something that felt stressful or overwhelming, food was always my go-to. Stress eating, emotional eating, sabotaging at night, on the weekends, that was always my go-to. One of the reasons I decided to record this series in real time, as we're literally navigating so much of what's happening, is because, as I've shared with you, I've literally this entire year been witnessing my self-care take deeper and deeper roots. I really love that metaphor or analogy for it, because if you can think of a tree and it already has deep roots. So probably if you're a listener of the podcast, your self-care, whatever you already do for self-care, it already has deep roots. So there's already things that you do for your self-care. And there are times that just require for our self-care to take deeper roots. And so what I just shared with you is one of those examples of just a moment. Again, there's so many that I could share with you, but just one example of, okay, on this particular day, I didn't just kind of keep working as usual. I tended to the emotional self-care that was needed. And by the way, maybe if you just heard me say that, I know that one of the things that you may be thinking is like, well, Brenda, sometimes I don't have time, like in the middle of the day to, like adjust what I'm doing or stop what I'm doing. And I totally get that. And so it may not be in the middle of the day, but even at the end of your day, how can you do something for yourself to support your emotional self-care as needed, even at the end of your day? Because it most certainly doesn't have to be in the middle of the day. I definitely, most certainly, I am a mom as well. I have a daughter as well. I am an entrepreneur. I run a business as well. And there are plenty of days, more often than not, where I don't or can't in the middle of the day take Waffle out on a walk and cry because I'm like, I need a good cry. Like I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling worried. I'm feeling like sick to my stomach. Like I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe what I'm hearing. And so if it's not in the middle of the day, no problem. What might this look like for you at the end of your day or at the beginning of your day? Or maybe it's a version that only takes a minute. Like maybe it's just a deep inhale and exhale. So quick recap from this first example. Crying was an emotional self-care strategy. Moving gentle movement. I went on a walk. This was an emotional self-care strategy. Helps to like move that energy, the emotions, kind of give it an outlet. And even getting outside, getting some fresh air. And also that gets a little bit into the nervous system self-care. And I will talk more about that in part 3. And honestly, I'll say this one last thing, and then I'll move into my second example that I wanted to share with you. But even if all that I did in this example was just bring my hand to my heart and take a breath, an inhale, a profound inhale and exhale, and even say like, oh shit, and just let that be a moment that honors my experience. And that, what I just described to you, that can be a moment that could take less than a minute. But sometimes we don't even give ourselves that. And I know that because that's been me as well. And I also want to say I'm not perfect at this on a day-to-day, and we don't need to be. Perfection is not required. That's why I decided, again, to record this series to share with you, hey, here's just some examples. Here are just some examples, but please center your own experience and what might this look like for you? It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy. I mean, literally, if you're imagining me like outside walking my dog crying, like that's not pretty, quote unquote, right? Not in a conventional way. That's messy, but that's what emotional support looked like for me in that moment. That's what emotional self-care looked like for me in that moment. Okay, so bringing back to just the main goal of me sharing any of this is to be supportive. So I hope that there were some little nuggets in there that were helpful, that you can take and integrate for yourself, that you can apply and center for your own experience. Okay, my second example that I wanted to share with you, it's related, but it's also a little bit different. Because the first example that I just shared with you was about specific news that I heard, and then my emotional response to that, and then my emotional self-care that followed. This next example, you already heard me talking about this a little bit in part 1. I shared some of my emotions and my own experience as it relates to the ICE raids that we've been seeing and witnessing. But that is a little bit different. Of course, there's overlap, but the processing of that has been a little bit different because it's been like, it's not just one piece of news or information. It's so many different instances and stories. Every day, there's so many stories. And so the emotional response to that has also been different. And I think I've probably had every single emotion that I could literally name and that you can think of as it relates to that. Oh my gosh, anger, sadness, frustration, hopelessness, like literally every emotion you can probably think of, I've felt it. I've felt it for the different stories that I've heard and just different even videos that I've seen with my own eyes. And then my brain has to, is processing these things that I'm seeing. And so in that sense, I want to name that distinction. And I have for sure cried, and I have for sure gone on many walks, and I've done a lot of journaling as well. And so I want to share with the second example. This is basically, I'm talking about the ongoing witnessing of injustice, violence, that isn't kind of like a one piece of information. There's for sure been crying and what I've already shared, but I'm going to add two new things that have been really helpful for me. One of those being journaling. I've been doing a lot of journaling. If you are one of my clients or you've worked with me and you've heard me talking about writing as a tool, you may have heard me share this before, but when I first way back began my journey to change my relationship with food, writing absolutely was one of my first tools and practices for transforming my relationship with food. I can think back to when I first started this journey, like it's way over 10 years ago. I think it's actually going to be like 15 or 16 years at this point, but I'm not going to try to do math because let me stay focused on the subject. But it's been a long time. When I first started on this journey, just healing my relationship with food, healing my relationship with my body, writing was a huge part of that. And I have journals and journals and journals and journals. Writing was absolutely one of the first tools, we could say, that I utilized that really helped me to change things and really transform my relationship with food, which really was about my relationship with my emotions and my emotional self-care and emotional processing. And so it's so interesting as I'm sharing this with you now that writing and art, by the way, writing and art, it's all going to come full circle here in a moment. I actually have a lot of art that I did during that time as well. So I have boxes full of journals and journals and journals. And I have, even right now in my office, right around my desk, there's at least 4 different canvases of things that I painted way back when. A lot of what I was feeling and expressing and that emotional processing that was happening through journaling and art. It was happening, I was taking those emotions and I was processing them through words, through ink on paper, was giving that an outlet. It was giving it a voice in the many, many, many journals that I filled. And so I'm sharing with you, this was a big part at the beginning of my journey of so much of that healing. And so that was paper and pen in the journals and the journals and journals that I have literally still boxes full of. And also on a canvas and with paints and different mediums. And fast forward to now, because that was for like the first year of my journey where writing and painting were such a big part of that emotional self-care, emotional outlet and healing. It was that first year, and then it has been a bunch of other things, but it wasn't really journaling or art the way it was in that first year. And so it's been so interesting that now, this year, guess what? Not surprisingly, I have started journaling again, not because I wrote it in my New Year's resolution. I did not write it in my New Year's resolution. I didn't say like, oh, I'm going to start journaling this year. Not at all. I have started journaling again this year, as I said at the top of this episode, out of necessity, because I'm like, what do I do with this? What do I do with what I'm feeling and living and experiencing and the emotions that are like coursing through my veins right now? What do I do with this? Because as you're listening to me, you've felt it. How do we know we're feeling an emotions? Because we feel it in our body. How do you know when you're feeling sad? You feel it in your body. How do you know when you're feeling angry? You feel it in your body. How do you know when you're feeling rage? How do you know when you're feeling joy? How do you know when you're feeling anything? We feel it. We feel it in our body. And so all of that to say, I'm not surprised, but also didn't plan for this, that this year in 2025, journaling is back. Like I have been writing almost every day. Again, not because I want to, not because I thought it would like look cool on my schedule. It wasn't like a goal that I wrote out for it's out of necessity, because what do I do with this? With all of this, I need to give it an outlet. And the more that I'm sharing it with you and describing it, all the dots connect, because it has been a steady kind of like drip drip of these stories, and it hasn't been just like, oh, there was this one incident that happened, somewhere in the world, just this one incident, and then you take that, and no, it's been like drip 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 every day, stories, examples. And so there's a lot to process. And so I have been journaling. If I could say it in a way, I think it's like writing as needed as an outlet, as expression of what it is that I am experiencing. And along with that, even though I haven't been painting, so I haven't been painting on the canvas, but actually just yesterday, I recorded a video that I'm going to be sharing on Instagram. And I did take somewhat of a break from social media, which I talked about that in part 1. So you know all about that. Just that's been part of what it looks like for me to be gentle with myself. So super important. But yesterday, I recorded a video that I'm going to be sharing on Instagram. And I have actually been creating content that I'm going to start to share. And that is pretty much a way of creating, but it's just a different canvas. It's a different canvas. And so it's a different kind of creation. And if you think about it, people have been creating music, lyrics, songs, art. People have been creating to express how they feel. So I mean, probably since the beginning of time. And so for some of you listening, you may completely resonate with journaling, and you might be like nodding your head vigorously as you're listening to me, like, Brenda, I am already, every day I'm writing. It's such a powerful outlet. I could not live without journaling right now. You just may be resonating with that or something else that I said. But I want to offer this if you're listening, you're like, Brenda, journaling just doesn't do it for me. Or if you're like, Brenda, I cannot paint or do anything artistic for the life of me, and neither of those resonate. Remember, again, center your experience, and we are each unique individuals. I am sharing what has felt supportive for me in real time that is really deepening and more deeply rooting my self-care as needed, so that I'm not like defaulting to old coping mechanisms that just aren't actually helpful anymore. As you know, for a very long time, stress eating, emotional eating, self-sabotage, that was the default in my life, that for me, it just actually created more things that I didn't want in my life. And it didn't add value to my life and actually wasn't supportive. And so I'm sharing with you in real time, here's what my self-care looks like right now. And so sometimes some of that's crying, some of that's gentle movement, some of that's, lots and lots of writing and journaling. I have been writing a lot. I have a lot to say. I've been writing a lot. And where would all that go if I wasn't writing it or like creating it into something somehow? Well, I'll tell you where it used to go. I can think back to when I would emotionally eat pretty much every night. And it was, in hindsight, it's so clear to me that I was like literally shoving down my emotions. And so now, fast forward however many years later, now, even though there's so much that I'm processing and so many emotions that I'm navigating and feeling, as so many of us are, what I'm not doing is shoving those feelings down. That's what I'm not doing. And so then what do we do with them? That's the emotional self-care piece. And some of that is looking like journaling. Some of that is looking like, for me, creating content in a way that feels empowering. Like instead of shoving my feelings down, I'm actually giving them a voice. And that feels good for me. And that feels right for me. So check in with you. What feels right for you? What feels supportive for you? What are the emotions that you're navigating, processing, allowing? And what would feel supportive for you? What would give an outlet for you that feels good, that feels right for you? And this is where, if you feel that you don't have enough tools, you don't have enough strategies, and you feel called that you would like to have more strategies, you would like to have more ways to process emotions. Maybe you're listening to me share some of my examples in my story, and maybe you're feeling like, oh my gosh, Brenda, food feels like my only go-to still. Or you're thinking, I don't know what are the things that feel supportive for me. I would love to explore that so that I can support myself better during this time. And I would love to do that. And if you don't want to do that on your own, and you would love to do that with coaching support, and or you would like to learn emotional processing strategies, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, I teach my clients over a dozen different emotional processing strategies inside of the Last 10 coaching community. So that's one place where we could work together. And inside of the Last 10, you do have access to direct coaching support from me. So like I said, come and check out the details, brendalomelli.com. I also have my 30-day course, She Creates Freedom. And that's also a really special place where you can come and learn more and be equipped with so many tools for processing emotions. And She Creates Freedom is a really special place. It doesn't exist anywhere else on the internet. Actually, I feel this way about the Last 10 as well. They're just different. So go and check out the details at brendalomelli.com. But She Creates Freedom, which is my 30-day course, was created specifically centering the experience of women of color and daughters of immigrants. But like I said, both of these places are unlike anywhere else. And if you're listening to me and you're listening to this series and you know that you're needing support in this area, and or you would just love to feel more supported in this area, I, of course, would be honored to share with you more of what I know and to be a support for you at next levels. Okay, so let me share this last and third example with you. I wanted to make sure that I picked examples relative to so much of what we're experiencing as a collective. But I do want to make a note here. For so many of us, this is on top of all the regular day stuff, like your kid having a tantrum, or getting a rude email from a coworker, or having to deal with something that came up in the business you run, or just family dynamic stuff as it relates to the holidays, or coordinating, the family holiday, card that goes out. I specifically did want to pick, like I said, things related to what we're experiencing, all of us in unique ways, but just things as it relates to the collective. But just to take a moment to name that this, in addition to all of the other things that we're also navigating and holding in our day-to-day lives, in all of the roles that we serve, and all of the things that matter to us in our lives. So I just wanted to name that and take a moment to name that as well. Okay, so for this last third example, recently, the man in the office in a press briefing, I think that's what they're called, or there was a woman that was asking him questions, a reporter. The man in office called this woman a piggy, and no one in the room, as far as we see, right, as far as the video, said anything. Not a single person. Similarly, I think it was like in the same week, maybe even, or in the same time period of like within a 2-week window, but not too much later, the man in the office was saying the most vile, horrendous things about the Somali community. Literally, I can't remember if he used the word trash or garbage. And again, I just felt sick to my stomach. Like, how is this happening? And how is this happening and no one is saying anything? Because in both of these examples, I think I was not surprised that these words were coming out of this man's mouth. Was not surprised by that at all. But I think the part that concerned me even more, and like, I mean, those comments were horrible, but not surprising. that day came out of his mouth. But the thing even beyond that I think made I was like sick to my stomach is that no one said a single thing. And kind of, I just think about and I worry about the permission structure that is just being created, right in front of our eyes. And so I was baffled. I was upset. I was angry as well. Did a bunch of other feelings. There's like a feeling emotions cocktail. I think in this case, I could definitely say like that the cocktail of feelings that I had as a response when I just first heard this or saw this is upset, angry, and concerned. Like I said, concerned about the permission structure happening and how are things shifting around what's normal, quote unquote, or acceptable. And so in this case, I wanted to share this example because it did feel what I did as a response, my emotional self-care was a little bit different than the other examples I shared, which really was to meet with friends and to talk and vent, to be honest, right? We could just call it vent and talk. There are these couple of friends of mine that I went to college with, and we've been friends for like over 20 years at this point. Some of my closest friends. And the timing was just literally perfect because we had our dinner every once a month. We get together and we have dinner. And I think even planning those and putting those on my calendar feels like self-care. I would say both of my friends would agree. I mean, we talk about this. We talk about how getting together once a month literally is self-care. Sharing with each other, what are the things going on in our lives? What are the things we're excited about? What are the great things happening? And also, what are the things happening that we're concerned that we, both, and sharing that, it literally feels like a medicine. We say it to each other every time after we meet for dinner. And of course, we always pick like a cool restaurant that we want to go check out with good food and maybe some good drinks. But that time with friends, with like-minded individuals or people where that feels like a safe space or a community was absolutely a part of my emotional self-care in this example. And planning that and having that on my schedule. I'm not kidding. I can't even tell you, like on this day, I was so happy to see that our dinner was on my schedule that day because it also gives me a break. I love my daughter, love her so much, but it also gives me a break from bedtime routine and like saying a million times, brush your teeth. And instead I'm just chilling, enjoying some beautiful food, sharing with my friends what are the things I'm excited about, concerned about. And this even makes sense on the nervous system self-care level because when we are sharing with our voice, and this is whether you're singing or talking or even humming, there's stimulation of the vagus nerve, which then is supportive for your nervous system. But then there's also the human interaction. Aspect of it and the oxytocin aspect of it, of even just like saying hello, sitting down, sharing a meal. There's that trust, there's that connection, there's that human connection and support and safety and belonging in the midst when there's so much happening that doesn't feel that way. So those are the 3 examples that I wanted to share with you in real time, for real life. I'm navigating life right now as well as a full human, navigating all the usual stuff along with anything else. And the emotional self-care doesn't need to look perfect. It just needs to make sense for you, and it needs to be supportive for you as a unique individual in a way that honors you, in a way that supports you. And so if you have found yourself feeling like you don't have enough tools for your emotional self-care that feels like is needed right now, or you're even just finding like would love more support and or even a space and community that approaches emotional self-care in this holistic way, or if you are noticing yourself defaulting in a way that doesn't feel good for you to old coping mechanisms. Remember, I said this in part 1, coping is not a flaw. Coping is actually brilliant, but we can be intentional in the ways that we cope when it is necessary to do so. If any of those resonate for you, of course, I want to invite you. Go to brendalomelli.com. I have my coaching community, The Last 10. I also have my 30-day course, She Creates Freedom. If you're interested in private coaching, please email my team, support@brendalomelli.com. I do work with a handful of private clients each year, so that is also an option. But please know that I am in this with you, that we deserve to be so supported. Today, we unpacked specifically emotional self-care and what that can look like. And so I hope that you took different aspects of what I shared today in a way that can be so helpful and supportive to you in your life right now. All right, my sister, I'll see you here next time. Talk to you soon.